Randy's Random Rants.
As darkness settles over the skyline, Frances Newton, a married 21-year-old mother of two, arrives at her apartment building with her cousin Sharon.
They went up to the apartment door, and she noticed it was slightly open.
Frances enters her residence. She looks around. She sees her husband laying on the couch.
Frances's 23-year-old husband Adrian appears to be sleeping peacefully.
Adrian.
But when Frances tries to wake him, she makes a heart-stopping discovery.
She walked around the couch, and she saw blood.
Honey? Frances?
When Frances got closer, she saw that he had been shot.
The first thing she does is run towards her children's room because as a mother, you're concerned if this is happening here, where are my children?
What Frances finds in her children's bedroom only compounds the nightmare. She made the gruesome discovery that both of her children were shot.
She's frantically screaming. She's running about the place. She's trying to figure out what to do next.
She was inconsolable, absolutely beside herself, so much so she couldn't even dial 911. Her cousin had to call the cops.
Police!
So when police walked into the apartment, they saw Adrian on the couch, shot execution style in the head. The children were also killed execution style.
As the grim reality of what happened sinks in, her husband, her son Alton, and her baby daughter Farah, all dead, Frances grows dizzy and faints. I think any woman who finds not only husband dead, their children murdered, you couldn't. It's inconceivable. I mean, how could that happen? Frances and Adrian were kind of the classic sweetheart story.
They were both immature in certain ways, but they loved each other.
21-year-old Frances Newton had a good job, a loving husband, and two children she adored. But on April 7th, 1987, Frances's dream life unraveled in the most horrifying way imaginable. That evening, she found her husband Adrian, along with her 7-year-old son and 21-month-old daughter, shot to death inside their North Houston apartment.
She was beyond completely distraught.
It's not bad. It's tragic. It's horrendous.
Each one of the children had been shot one time.
The children were killed execution style, one shot to the chest for both the son and daughter.
It's a gruesome scene, but not an entirely uncommon one in Houston at the time.
So the police were initially looking at this as a possible home invasion. And I'm guessing they were looking at it that way because it was not, in fact, the safest neighborhood.
Houston was a little more depressed financially. It was coming out of the savings and loan crisis, so parts of the city had more pockets of poverty. The north side of town, kind of where this happened, had, pretty high crime rate.
And that's when she found her family dead and called authorities.
Do you know of anyone who might want to hurt your family?
It's then Frances makes a startling confession.
My husband was into drugs.
Frances was very quick to say that drugs could have been really behind all of this.
Frances was working, so Adrian was kind of staying at home, taking care of the kids.
We got another
He'd
finger
begun
pointer
dabbling,
here.
Selling drugs.
Frances also believes her brother-in-law Stephen, who had recently moved in with them, was the one pressuring Adrian to deal drugs.
And that was a concern of hers. And the night of the murders, they discussed that, the fact that the brothers should quit staying there. And that was something that, according to Frances, they worked out, the night of the murders before she left.
But possibly be owed a large amount of money by her husband. And so there was the possibility that he may have come in to collect.
But once you kill Adrian, you cannot leave two witnesses. You can't walk into a house, kill somebody, and have a 7-year-old boy present and leave that house and not be concerned that that child can identify you.
They need to eliminate another potential suspect, Frances herself.
Police always look at the immediate close family when it comes to a crime. The police asked her for her clothing that she was wearing. Frances obliges.
The night of the murder, the police actually did what's called a bag test, and that's where they put a bag over Frances's hand
And therefore, inside the bag, they could detect whether or not there was any gunpowder, any gun residue left on her hands.
They're looking for what's called stippling. And what happens is when a weapon fires, gunpowder residue fires forward and backwards a little bit. And so stippling will basically get on your skin, but what it actually does, it actually burns in your skin.
The results of the gunshot residue test seem conclusive.
There was no evidence of gunpowder residue on Frances Ann.
She was told by a Houston police officer that she was no longer a person of interest.
No one claims to have noticed anything unusual.
They just kind of thought it was a neighborhood-friendly fire, because that's a lot of what was going on in Houston at the time. So they didn't think a whole lot into it.
While the Newtons' neighbors can offer up no new evidence, back at police headquarters, a concrete lead has surfaced.
Authorities received an anonymous tip about a truck being parked in the driveway around the time the murder occurred. They said, hey, between 7 and 7:30.
Forward with additional information.
We really appreciate you coming in. Go ahead and tell us what you saw.
It's about Frances and how she was acting that day. The cousin said that she really was acting oddly because she was going around kissing her relatives, saying, you never know when you're going to see him again. She wanted her cousin to go back to the apartment with her.
And I said, okay. And we got in the car, and she started to back out.
So as they left the house, the brunette sat down, got back in the car, and they headed to her house.
All right, did you see what was inside the bag?
No, but it was just strange. That's why I'm coming to you guys.
Detectives aren't sure what to make of Sharon's story.
So the detective took the cousin back to the house, and that's where they found the bag with the gun in it.
And it's not just any gun either, but a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. The same caliber as the shells found in the Newtons' apartment. If this is the murder weapon, then what is it doing inside the young victim's backpack?
Wow.
The police, I think, were immediately suspicious simply because of recovering the gun. But at that time, they wanted to investigate further because they wanted to find out, number one, who did the gun belong to? Number two, what would ballistics testing show?
Detectives send the gun to their crime lab for analysis. As they await the results, they bring Frances in to question her about the gun. To their surprise, Frances is very forthcoming.
She said she discovered the gun at home. She told authorities where she hid the gun and why she hid the gun.
According to Frances, she was worried one of her children would find the gun and accidentally shoot themselves.
And when you found the gun, that was the same day as the shooting?
Yes.
And why did you hide the gun?
Wow.
Honestly,
What a coincidence.
I didn't want it around my children, so I took it out and I did errands.
She wanted to keep danger out of her home, so she took the gun, put it in her purse, then later transferred it into her son's bag.
Frances
And
claimed
the
she
same
planned on
day,
disposing of
your
the gun
kids
later that
died.
day. But while running errands,
By
she got
gunshot
nervous about
bullets.
driving around town with an unlicensed firearm in the back of her car. So she left the gun on the porch of her parents' empty home in the hope that she could get rid of it that evening.
So you're telling us it's just a terrible coincidence?
Their marriage had devolved into a vicious cycle of revenge and infidelity.
So they were living in the same home at that time, but they both had extramarital affairs going on.
There were reports where Frances made the statement, if Adrian ever cheated on me again, I'm going to kill him.
The gun that was used in the crime was traced back to someone by the name of Frankie. And upon further investigation, it turns out that Frankie was the new love interest for Frances.
And so at that point, police decided to strictly focus on Frances in this murder investigation.
Still, detectives aren't completely convinced jealousy was the primary motive behind Adrian Newton's murder.
When there's a rage killing or like family members kill each other, the person who's dead has normally been hurt real badly by either being shot a number of times, stabbed a number of times, some signs of either mutilation. But in this case, it looked like it was a cold-blooded execution.
The fact that the Newton children were also murdered casts even more doubt over the jealousy motive.
Several things didn't make sense. Any mother, it's hard to believe, would carry out a cold-blooded execution of her children.
But as detectives dig deeper, they make another discovery. One that speaks potentially to a different motive than mere jealousy.
Hey, that's great work. I appreciate it. That's it. Hey, Jeff.
What's up?
Fraud's just found a $100,000 life insurance policy that she took out on the husband and the kids.
She took out life insurance policies on her family prior to the murders.
It was a big deal to police for several reasons. One is this was just a few weeks before the murders happened that she took out a $100,000 life insurance policy on her husband and children. Frances had actually gone in to get some more auto insurance. She was friends with the insurance agent, and the insurance agent really encouraged her to start looking at life insurance. And she forged her husband's signature. And here she was on probation for felony forgery.
And that's not all.
2 weeks after the murders, Frances went to cash in the insurance claim.
For police, the insurance policy seems to be the motive they've been looking for.
Man, you want to talk about sleeping with the enemy,
to collect
man?
and cash in on life insurance policies. The fact that she had a forgery conviction and was on probation for forgery, the fact that she had been fired for stealing from one of her jobs might show that finances were an issue for this woman. It may show that she wanted to make a big score, which is $100,000, by killing her family.
But is the seemingly sweet, mild-mannered Frances Newton truly capable of such a horrific
Seems like
crime?
a little bit more than finances.
The .25 caliber handgun found in Frances's son's backpack seems to hold the key, connect the gun to the murders. They placed the gun in Frances's hand just hours before the assassination of her family was carried out.
Wow.
There's just one problem. The initial gunshot residue test done on Frances's hands came back negative. Thankfully for detectives, other forensic tests on Frances's clothing tell a different story.
They did find nitrates on her hemline of her dress, and this is indicative of gunpowder.
Gunpowder has nitrates in it, and once a bullet is fired, the nitrates become nitrites, and so that shows that whoever was wearing that
So this is
clothing
how y'all
was
do it
the
in
presence
Texas,
of,
huh?
You know, very close
I
to a
ain't
weapon
meeting
that
no
was fired.
girls from Texas.
On April 22nd, 1987, Houston police charged 21-year-old Frances Newton with 3 counts of murder.
It's horrific that she would do something like that. It's almost unbelievable.
To kill your kids is the worst thing in the world. I mean, there's no excuse for it. You brought them here, they didn't ask to be here, and then you want to take them out. There's no excuse for that. Never. Never.
Shot in the chest, though? Like, what the fuck are
18
you
months
thinking
after
about?
the murders, the trial of Frances Newton for the murder of her family gets underway. In their opening arguments, prosecutors assert that on April 7th, 1987, Frances Newton waited for her husband Adrian Newton to fall asleep, shot him in the temple at point-blank range, then proceeded to shoot her 7-year-old son and infant daughter straight through their hearts.
Wow.
For a mother to kill her children in that manner, I think is extreme. I think that's one of the reasons why
Was she smoking meth?
people.
Was she in a sociopathic state where
Was
she
she-
figured, I just don't care? And in order to get what I want,
Did she
in
watch
this case,
Michael
possibly
Myers
insurance money
that night?
or even freedom?
Maybe
Is this
she
a
was
means
on
to an end?
acid or something?
Prosecutors claim they know the motive for this heinous crime. The $100,000 life insurance policy Frances had recently taken out on her family.
The facts are that a mother murdered her
So
baby
she was just a
and
greedy
murdered her young
motherfucking
son
bitch.
and murdered her husband just to get money. And that's about as horrific a case as you can get. It was a really strong case. She forged her husband's name to take out an
They're
insurance
like,
policy.
Yeah,
She
they
was
were
there
high
in the
school
apartment.
sweethearts
She
and
hid
they
the murder
were
weapon
so in
immediately
love.
afterwards.
Like,
The murder weapon was
you
taken
really,
from her
really gotta
boyfriend's
watch
apartment
who
where she
you
had
be
access
fucking
to it.
letting
She
in
tried
your
to
house,
collect on the insurance
sleeping
policies.
with,
That's very,
marrying.
very strong evidence.
You could be married to a
The
motherfucker
defense
like that
counters
for
by making a
years.
bold but risky move. On October 21st, 1988, looking more like a choir girl than a killer, Frances Newton takes the stand in her own defense. She starts by telling the jury her version of what happened the day her family was murdered.
Okay.
Hey.
So, I know things have been kind of tense between us.
Yeah.
Frances and Adrian are home, and his brother comes home.
What's up, guys? What's going
Do
on?
you mind? We were just kind of
Can I
talking.
walk into something?
Yeah.
Frances asks him to leave because she wants to discuss some things with Adrian and needs a little personal time to do so.
Her and Adrian began to talk about their relationship.
Claimed to be in possession of the same gun used in the shootings. Frances tells the court the same story she told police.
She's like, you know what? I don't want that coming into our home. I'm going to take this gun and hide it so my family can be safe.
But the prosecution asserts Frances is the one who brought the gun into the Newton home in the first place.
They ended up tracing the murder weapon to the boyfriend. That's how the gun went from one person to the other. She probably got the gun out of the drawer where her boyfriend's clothes were, where she had access to.
Frances was actually the one who took this gun in her home.
But according to Frances's defense team, there's no real proof this was the same gun used to commit the murders.
There were a lot of problems with the Houston Crime Lab. We found out there was a lot of problems with evidence. The question is, did they properly tag each weapon and did they properly mark each weapon? You had a lot of reasons to suspect that maybe there was a problem in the way the evidence was maintained.
As for the insurance policy,
I mean,
Frances
you
offers a
putting-
simple explanation.
You put
She said at the time that
pistols.
she did not want him to know that there had been money saved for that, which is understandable if in fact she thought that he may have had a drug problem.
You
She said,
putting
look,
pistols
we
in
had-
your kid's
we had our
bag.
problems.
What if somebody
And-
found
but
your
I
kid's
loved
bag, like a
She
cop,
loved Adrian. It wasn't just
with
her
the
children.
gun
She
in it.
loved him.
and then,
It's powerful testimony.
like I said,
but there's one
from the
issue
beginning
that
of
Frances's
this, she's
defense
pointing
team still
fingers.
hasn't explained.
Yeah,
They
my
found
husband's
some
on
nitrite
drugs, he
particles on the
deals
bottom of the
drugs.
dress. And so the state's theory
Anytime
was that
motherfuckers is
she was
pointing
pointing
fingers,
the gun down when she shot the
you gotta
children,
look
and
at
that
that
some
bitch.
gunpowder
You gotta
residue
look
had
at
gotten on
their
the bottom
ass.
of the dress.
But according to Frances, there's another, more logical explanation for the presence of nitrites on her dress.
It is indicative of gunpowder, but it is also can be found in fertilizer.
Frances had
Oh,
hit
yeah,
my
so
daughter
what,
with a
somebody
garden earlier,
probably
and she
busted
dropped my
off
skirt,
nuts
so the
on her
nitrates
skirt?
are from that, not a gun.
didn't come
Fearing
from a
the
gun.
nitrites aren't enough to prove
Somebody
Frances committed this
fertilized her
crime,
ass.
prosecutors pull their trump card. Testing, they claim, proves Frances had already murdered her family by the time she picked her cousin up to run errands.
Frances discreetly hid a gun in her parents' abandoned home.
When police had the gun in their custody, of course, they did some ballistics testing. Through that testing, it was shown that that, in fact, was the gun used in the murder of these three people.
Took
But
them that long
Frances's
to
defense
do that?
team isn't so confident in detectives' findings.
Back in the 1980s, police didn't even wear rubber gloves at the crime scene. I wouldn't put it past them at all that they made a mistake.
On October 24th, 1988, with that question hanging in the jurors' minds, both sides rest their case. But when the jury returns with their verdict, will they throw the book at Frances Newton? Or will their decision open up a whole new can of worms?
That's when people started to realize that there were actually a lot of unanswered questions and different things that had not been explored.
Like what? Like whose dick is she sucking? Who's tapping that ass?
Frances Newton was tried in Harris County, Texas. Between 1976 and 2013, criminal cases tried there resulted in 116 executions, more than any other county in the United States.
The red one is more gooder to me because it tastes like berries. They're really squishy. And then I'm gonna fly.
Am I the only one that finds this commercial disturbing? Who in the hell wants to see white collar executive businessmen and women at a table, a business table, in a business meeting, talking, sounding like little fucking kids with gummy bears popping them in their mouth? Like, that shit, I tell you the truth, I stopped eating Haribo gummy bears after that fucking commercial. I don't even eat them shits no more. Wait, no, I'm lying. I eat the sour ones, but not the regular ones anymore. If I see them popping fucking sour ones in their mouth, if they make a commercial like that, I'll stop eating those shits too.
Frances Newton's murder trial is nearing its conclusion. Accused of shooting her husband and her two young children to death, her fate lies in the hands of the jury.
They came back pretty quickly. They found her guilty of murder, and they sentenced her to death.
Why? You let them live.
So she was
You don't
found
kill
guilty
them.
and sentenced to death, but that was just the beginning.
Even with the guilty verdict, the case is far from over.
If a defendant goes to trial and gets convicted, the first step is a direct appeal.
The original representatives had filed affidavits stating their own incompetence during this case. It took some time, but eventually her case did catch the attention of some religious groups as well as
I'd have convicted her.
Texas Innocence Project.
I would have convicted her just for sticking
In
a
2004,
pistol in her
16
kid's
years
book
after her
bag.
conviction, Frances's case piques the interest of high-powered defense attorney John LeGroff.
As a defense lawyer, people will call you up and say, like, hey, this person's been wrongfully convicted, they're innocent, and you should look into it. The people who called me really impressed upon me that this woman may really be innocent.
Reviewing the file, LeGroff finds several aspects of Frances's case highly disturbing.
Frances got crushed in that trial. A defense lawyer is supposed to stand up for their client. Nobody ever stood up for her in that courtroom. Not one damn minute of that trial.
Filing an appeal on behalf of Frances, LeGroff singles out not only her subpar legal defense, but also the Houston Crime Lab's shoddy methods of preserving and processing evidence.
At this time, the Houston Crime Lab had come under a lot of fire because they were known for misplacing evidence, sometimes allocating evidence to the wrong case.
December 1st, 2004. Frances is scheduled to be executed in 2 hours. But with another possible appeal in the works, Governor Rick Perry grants a 120-day stay of her execution. With the reprieve granted, LeGroff requests that new forensic tests be conducted on the murder weapon.
The ballistics were retested, and that was the defense expert retested them, the sheriff's office retested them, and it came out with the same result. That gun fired the bullets into all 3 of the victims.
The test results satisfy the court, and Frances's death sentence is reinstated. On September 14th, 2005, Frances Newton is put to death by lethal injection.
You should have let her ass live in jail
We
forever.
have various reasons why this case was catching so much attention. There's the symbolism there with
And
it being the
LeGraw.
first African-American woman to be
Who in the
executed in the
fuck
state
are
of
you?
Texas since the Civil War. And on top of that, you have people who are invested in this, not only people in her community who feel she's innocent, but this is drawing attention from various
If they feel that she's so innocent,
groups and things of that
do
nature.
they know who the killer is?
More than
Did
a
any of
decade
them
after
have
Frances
anything
Newton's
else to put
execution,
into that shit?
Opinions and emotions
Does somebody
about the
have a
verdict
fucking
run high.
idea or a clue?
There was no indication that she had any animosity towards her children, that she had any loss of love for her children. You know, so for her out of the blue just to go in and kill her husband and then to murder her kids as well, those are some things that stuck out to me. She's ruthless.
The mother has chosen to shoot that child for money, and that's about as horrific a case as you can get.
Innocent or guilty, she did not get a fair trial. She was poor and broke and didn't have any legal representation. She got caught up in a situation that cost her her life.
But whether they believe Frances
I don't
Newton got
know
a fair
about
trial
that
or
shit.
not,
I don't know.
there's one thing both sides can agree on.
You definitely
In a struggle
in
to
the
keep
right
their
place,
young family afloat,
Texas.
2 young lovers became
All they see
unfaithful
is
to one
a black
another,
nigga. They gonna
and the
kill your
result
ass
was
regardless.
devastating.
I mean, this is a mother who might have been upset with her husband for cheating on her, but she looks sick, like she killed her kids for money. It's kind of like her being in love with this guy kind of sealed her fate, in a sense.